Is the canned food in your pantry slowly poisoning your family? What if I told you that some of Australia's most trusted canned food brands contain BPA lining that leaches into food, added sugars higher than soft drinks, and sodium levels so extreme they deliver half your daily limit in a single serving? These are the emergency pantry staples you buy thinking they are safe backup meals. These are the canned vegetables you feed your children believing they are healthy. I spent weeks researching ingredient lists, can lining studies, and toxicology reports on food additives in canned products. What I discovered will change how you see those metal cans stacked in your cupboard. Let me take you through the worst offenders. Number 1. SPC baked beans. This one hurts because SPC has been an Australian icon since 1906. The brand represents Australian fruit and vegetable canning heritage with decades of marketing emphasizing local farmers and quality ingredients. SPC baked beans in the red and white can is in virtually every Australian pantry. But here is what most Australians do not know. SPC has changed hands multiple times, and the formulation has degraded significantly. SPC was sold to Coca-Cola Amatil in 2005, then sold again to Shepparton Partners Collective in 2019. The brand is now owned by a private equity-backed entity focused on cost optimization, cheaper ingredients, and maximum shelf life through heavy preservatives. Look at the ingredient list for SPC baked beans. After beans and water, the third ingredient is sugar. Each half-cup serving contains 10.8 grams of sugar. That is nearly 3 teaspoons of added sugar in what should be a savory protein food. A typical serving of baked beans on toast uses a full cup, which delivers 21.6 grams of sugar. That is more sugar than a glazed donut. The tomato sauce contains sugar, glucose syrup, and tomato paste. The glucose syrup is liquid sugar, added beyond the regular sugar, creating extreme sweetness that masks the metallic taste from can lining and poor quality tomatoes. Real baked beans traditionally contain molasses or a small amount of brown sugar. SPC uses refined white sugar and corn syrup. SPC baked beans contain 430 milligrams of sodium per half-cup serving. A full serving on toast delivers 860 milligrams, which is 37% of the maximum daily recommended sodium intake. The excessive sodium comes from added salt, plus the salt naturally present in the sauce. This level of sodium contributes to hypertension, particularly in children whose developing bodies are more sensitive to salt. The beans also contain thickener 1422, which is acetylated distache adipate. This is modified food starch chemically altered with acidic anhydride and adipic acid to improve stability and texture. The modification process creates compounds not found in natural food while approved by food regulators. Modified starches are unnecessary in traditional baked beans, which thicken naturally from bean starch released during cooking. SPC baked beans contain food acid 330, which is citric acid. While citric acid is generally considered safe, its presence indicates pH adjustment to prevent spoilage and extend shelf life. Traditional baked beans achieve preservation through proper canning technique, not added acids. The most concerning issue is the can lining. SPC, like most canned food manufacturers, uses epoxy resin can linings containing bisphenol. BPA is an endocrine-disrupting chemical that mimics estrogen in the body. Studies show BPA leaches from can linings into acidic foods like tomato-based sauces. The longer the food sits in the can, the more BPA leaches. Research published in Environmental Health Perspectives found that people who ate canned foods had BPA levels in their urine over 1,000% higher than people who avoided canned foods. BPA exposure is linked to hormonal disruption, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and reproductive problems. Children are particularly vulnerable because their endocrine systems are still developing. Consumer reviews describe SPC baked beans as too sweet with an artificial taste. One reviewer wrote that the beans taste more like dessert than a savory meal with sugar overwhelming any other flavors. Another said their children refused to eat SPC beans, describing them as slimy and weird tasting compared to homemade baked beans. When you buy SPC baked beans thinking you are supporting an Australian brand with the quality ingredients, You are eating private equity beans loaded with sugar and corn syrup, preserved with modified starches and acids, packed in BPA-lined cans that leach hormone disruptors into every serving. Number 2. Admona canned tomatoes. Admona has been canning Australian fruit and vegetables since 1918. The brand emphasizes Australian-grown produce and traditional canning methods. Admona diced tomatoes and crushed tomatoes are pantry staples for pasta sauces, stews, and casseroles. But here is the devastating truth about what is actually in those cans. Admona was owned by SPC until 2019, when both brands were sold together to Shepherd and Partners Collective. The same private equity ownership means similar cost-cutting measures and ingredient degradation. Your traditional Australian tomatoes are now private equity tomatoes. The ingredient list for Admona diced tomatoes shows tomatoes, tomato juice, and food acid, 330. That seems simple until you examine what those ingredients actually mean. The tomatoes are the lowest grade acceptable for canning. Premium tomatoes are sold fresh or used for premium products. Canning tomatoes are the coles, overripe, misshapen, blemished fruits that cannot command higher prices. The tomato juice is often reconstituted tomato paste, meaning the natural juice is removed, concentrated into paste, and then water is added back. This reduces shipping costs for the raw material, but degrades flavor and nutrition. Fresh tomatoes packed in their own juice taste significantly better than tomatoes in reconstituted juice. Admona adds citric acid to adjust pH below 4.6, which is necessary for safe canning of low-acid foods. However, the amount added is often excessive, creating noticeable sourness. Traditional Italian canned tomatoes use varieties naturally high in acid, requiring little or no added citric acid. The sodium content is approximately 65 milligrams per 100 grams, which seems modest. However, most recipes use an entire 400-gram can, delivering 260 milligrams of sodium just from the tomatoes before adding any salt to the dish. When making pasta sauce, you typically use 2 cans, plus additional salt, creating very high sodium meals. The most concerning issue is, again, the BPA lining. Tomatoes are highly acidic, which accelerates BPA leaching from canned linings. Studies show canned tomato products have some of the highest BPA contamination levels among canned foods. A study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found BPA levels in canned tomatoes were significantly higher than in fresh tomatoes or tomatoes in the glass jars. Admona cans use epoxy resin linings containing BPA. Every time you open a can of Admona tomatoes, you are exposing yourself to endocrine disruptors that leached from the plastic lining during months of storage. The acidic tomatoes essentially extract BPA from the plastic and concentrate it in the food. Consumer reviews describe Admona tomatoes as watery and lacking flavor compared to premium imported brands. One reviewer wrote that Admona diced tomatoes break down into mush during cooking, instead of holding their shape like quality San Marzano tomatoes. Another said that tomatoes taste metallic and tiny, likely from both the can lining and the citric acid. Independent taste tests comparing Australian canned tomatoes to Italian imports consistently rank Admona as inferior. The tomatoes are described as bland, watery, and overly acidic. The texture is poor, with some tomatoes being mushy, while others remain tough. When you buy Admona thinking you are supporting Australian farmers and getting quality tomatoes, you are eating the lowest grade tomatoes packed in reconstituted juice, heavily acidified for preservation. Stored in BPA-lined cans that leach endocrine disruptors for months before you eat them. Number 3. John West canned tuna. John West is one of Australia's most recognised seafood brands, dominant in the canned tuna market. The blue and gold cans are everywhere, marketed as healthy protein for sandwiches and salads. But here is what the seafood industry does not want you to know. John West is owned by Thai Union, a Thai seafood conglomerate, and the tuna inside those cans comes with serious environmental and health concerns. Thai Union acquired John West in 2010 as part of their global expansion. Your Australian tuna brand is now controlled by Thai corporate interests focused on maximizing seafood extraction from depleted oceans. The first problem is species depletion. John West tuna uses skipjack and yellowfin tuna, species under severe fishing pressure. Global tuna stocks have declined dramatically over the past 50 years due to industrial fishing. Skipjack is currently not overfished, but yellowfin populations in some regions are as severely depleted. The Marine Stewardship Council has raised concerns about tuna fishing practices, including by catching dolphins, turtles, and sharks. The second problem is mercury contamination. All tuna accumulate mercury from ocean pollution. Larger, longer-lived tuna species like yellowfin contain higher mercury levels than the smaller skipjack. Mercury is a neurotoxin that damages developing brains. Pregnant women and young children are advised to limit tuna consumption due to mercury risks. Food standards, Australia. New Zealand recommends pregnant women consume no more than 1 serve per fortnight of canned tuna. This warning is on the FSANZ website, but not prominently displayed on John West cans. Most consumers are unaware their healthy tuna sandwich contains a neurotoxin. The third problem is the canning liquid. John West tuna in spring water seems like the healthy choice, but the spring water is actually a salt brine. The sodium content is approximately 340 milligrams per 95 gram can when drained. That is 15% of daily maximum sodium intake from one small can of tuna. The salt is added for flavor and preservation, but contributes to excessive sodium intake. John West tuna in oil uses soybean oil, a cheap omega-6 heavy vegetable oil extracted with hexane solvents. The oil is refined at high temperatures, creating oxidation products. When tuna is packed in this oil for months, the fish fats absorb the degraded vegetable oil. You are eating fish contaminated with oxidized soybean oil. The fourth problem is BPA in canned linings. Like all canned foods, John West tuna cans are lined with epoxy resin containing BPA. The oil in tuna is lipophilic, meaning BPA preferentially dissolves into the fish fat. Studies show canned fish have higher BPA levels than canned vegetables because the fat absorbs more of the chemical from the lining. Research published in Environmental Health found that eating canned tuna significantly increased urinary BPA levels. The study participants showed BPA level spike within hours of consuming canned tuna, indicating rapid absorption of the endocrine disruptor. The fifth problem is histamine. Tuna that is not properly chilled immediately after catching can develop high histamine levels as the fish decomposes. Histamine causes scombro poisoning, which presents as flushing, headache, and gastrointestinal distress. While commercial tuna is monitored for histamine, quality control varies, and some batches have elevated levels that cause reactions in sensitive individuals. Consumer reviews describe variable quality in John West tuna. One reviewer wrote that some cans contain dry, flaky tuna, while others are mushy and unappetizing, suggesting inconsistent raw material quality. Another said they developed headaches after eating John West tuna, possibly from histamine or mercury sensitivity. Environmental investigations have documented labor abuses in the Thai union supply chain, including forced labor on fishing vessels and abusive working conditions in processing plants. When you buy John West, you may be supporting these practices despite the company's sustainability claims. When you buy John West tuna, thinking you are eating healthy protein, you are consuming fish from depleted populations, contaminated with mercury and BPA packed in oxidized soybean oil or salt brine, potentially supporting labor exploitation with health warnings buried where most consumers never see them. Number 4, Heinz canned spaghetti. Heinz spaghetti is an Australian childhood icon. The blue can, with spaghetti and tomato sauce, is what Australian kids grew up eating for quick lunches and easy dinners. Heinz spaghetti on toast is a national comfort food. But here is what makes this product one of the worst canned foods in Australian supermarkets. Heinz is owned by Kraft Heinz, the American-Brazilian multinational formed by the merger of Kraft Foods and Heinz in 2015. The company is controlled by 3G Capital, a Brazilian private equity firm, and Berkshire Hathaway. Your Aussie comfort food is foreign-owned and private equity managed. Look at the ingredient list for Heinz spaghetti: tomato puree, water, pasta, sugar, cheese, wheat flour, salt, and a long list of additives. The sugar content is 7.2 grams per 220 gram serving. That is nearly 2 teaspoons of sugar in what should be a savory pasta dish. The sauce is essentially tomato-flavored sugar syrup. The pasta is made from refined white flour with zero fiber and minimal nutrients. The tomato puree is reconstituted tomato paste, not fresh tomato sauce. The cheese is listed, but the amount is so small it contributes negligible protein or calcium. This is mostly a can of sugar water with overcooked pasta. The sodium content is 650 milligrams per serving. That is 28% of the maximum daily sodium intake. For children, this represents an even higher percentage of their smaller daily limits. One can of Heinz spaghetti pushes a child close to half their daily sodium allowance. The product contains thickener 1422, the same modified starch found in SPC baked beans. It contains food acid, 330 citric acid for pH adjustment. It contains flavor, which is a vague term that can include dozens of compounds. The disclosure is deliberately non-specific to avoid revealing the extent of artificial flavoring. Heinz spaghetti is marketed to children and advertised heavily during children's television programming. The product trains young palates to expect pasta sauce to be sweet and heavily salted. Children who grow up eating Heinz spaghetti develop preferences for sweet, salty, processed foods that persist into adulthood. The nutritional profile is terrible. Each serving provides minimal protein, minimal fiber, excessive sugar, and excessive sodium. The refined pasta causes rapid blood sugar spikes. This is not a balanced meal. This is junk food in a can. The BPA lining issue applies here as well. Acidic tomato sauce accelerates BPA leaching. Children eating Heinz spaghetti regularly are exposed to endocrine disruptors during critical developmental periods when hormonal disruption can have lasting effects. Consumer reviews from parents describe Heinz spaghetti as convenient but unhealthy. One parent wrote that their child became addicted to the sweet taste and refused to eat homemade pasta sauce, which was not sweet enough. Another said they stopped buying Heinz spaghetti after reading the label and realizing it contained more sugar than their child should eat in an entire day. Nutritionists describe Heinz spaghetti as one of the worst convenience foods for children, comparable to feeding them candy for dinner. The sugar content, refined carbohydrates, and sodium levels make this unsuitable for regular consumption. When you buy Heinz spaghetti for quick kids' meals, you are feeding children private equity processed food, with sugar levels rivaling desserts, sodium pushing daily limits, refined pasta with no nutrition. Packed in BPA-lined cans, training their palates to prefer junk food over real food. Number 5. Wattie's canned soups. Wattie's is a New Zealand brand widely available in Australian supermarkets known for canned soups marketed as quick hottie meals. The range includes varieties like tomato soup, chicken noodle, and chunky vegetables. The packaging shows steaming bowls and promises home-style comfort. But here is what those cans actually contain. Wattie's is owned by Kraft Heinz, the same American-Brazilian multinational that owns Heinz spaghetti. The soups are manufactured to maximize shelf life and minimize ingredient costs while creating acceptable taste through salt, sugar, and flavor enhancers. The ingredient list for what is cream of tomato soup shows water, tomato paste, sugar, modified starch, vegetable oil, milk powder, salt, and flavor. Water is the first ingredient, meaning this is primarily water with tomato flavoring. The tomato paste provides tomato taste without the expense of actual tomatoes. The sugar content is 8.9 grams per 250 milliliters serving. That is over 2 teaspoons of sugar in tomato soup. The sugar is added to balance the acidity of tomato paste and create sweetness that masks the poor ingredient quality. The sodium content is 735 milligrams per serving. That is 32% of daily maximum sodium intake from a single bowl of soup. For anyone managing hypertension or kidney disease, 1 can of Wattie soup delivers dangerous sodium levels. The modified starch creates thickness without using cream or quality ingredients. The vegetable oil is typically palm oil or canola oil, cheap fats that replace dairy cream. The milk powder is reconstituted milk solids, cheaper than fresh milk or cream. What is chicken noodle? Soup is even worse. The chicken content is less than 2%. That tiny amount of chicken is predominantly mechanically separated chicken, which is chicken slurry created by forcing chicken carcasses through high-press strainers. What remains after most usable meat is removed is forced through screens to create paste that technically counts as chicken. The noodles are refined white pasta with no fiber or nutrients. The vegetables are present in tiny amounts, mostly carrots and celery, providing minimal nutrition. The soup is mostly salt water with noodles and chicken flavor. The flavor listed in Wadi soups includes yeast extracts, which are concentrated glutamates functioning like MSG. The yeast extract provides a savory umami taste without using quality stock or real meat. This is flavor engineering replacing actual cooking. What soups contain preservatives to extend shelf life. They contain acidifying agents to prevent bacterial growth. They contain emulsifiers to bind the oil and water. The ingredient list is long and reads like a chemistry experiment. The BPA lining leaches into the soup during storage, particularly concerning cream-based soups where the fat absorbs BPA preferentially. Studies show cream soups have higher BPA contamination than clear soups. Consumer reviews describe Wadi soups as salty and artificial tasting. One reviewer wrote that the cream of tomato soup tastes like sweet ketchup water, nothing like homemade tomato soup. Another said the chicken noodle is so salty it is inedible, requiring dilution with water to be palatable. Nutritionists note that canned soups are among the highest sodium foods in the Australian diet. A single can of Wadi soup can deliver half the daily sodium limit, contributing to population-wide hypertension rates. When you buy Wadi soup thinking you are getting quick, home-style comfort food, you are eating water, thickened with modified starch, flavored with yeast extracts, and sugar, containing trace amounts of actual ingredients with sodium levels, dangerous for regular consumption, packed in BPA-lined cans. Here is the bottom line. The Australian canned food market is dominated by foreign-owned brands selling heavily processed products in BPA-lined cans, with excessive sodium and added sugars. These corporations reformulated products to maximize shelf life and minimize costs through heavy processing, cheap ingredients, and chemical preservation. The result is canned foods that bear little resemblance to the fresh vegetables, beans, and fish they claim to contain. You deserve to know what chemicals are leaching into your food and what nutrients are destroyed by processing. If this video helped you understand what is really in canned foods, hit the like button and share this with everyone still buying SPC Heinz or John West, thinking they are safe pantry staples. Subscribe so you do not miss our next investigation. Thanks for watching.